Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit!
Okay, today I'm going to be talking about the Ask a Christian room from Clubhouse. And a couple days ago, the Ask a Christian club on Clubhouse got deleted. And all these people in here were wondering why their club got deleted. Well, I'm going to show why it got deleted. It's pretty obvious if you're paying attention. So for a little bit of context, this is the Ask a Christian room, and the byline is "We've Got Answers." And these are your hosts. You know, these people are all mods with this little symbol here. And we're going to be focusing mostly on this guy right here, Roy Montero. Now, Roy has a unique view on the topic of addiction. He doesn't think addiction exists. He doesn't think it's a real thing. And he's going to start to clash with some of the other Christians in this video. So let's go ahead and get into it and see how this goes.
Then there's desire, when it's conceived, gives birth to what? To sin.
That
how
proves no addiction. It's just willful disobedience, Malak, right?
May I interject?
Comment? No, we can't. Comment and Steph, you have been bastions of patience.
Thank you.
Please, comment.
So, just so everybody's aware, I'm atheist, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to come from this from an atheistic point of view. I'm quite happy to do this from a God-believing point of view. So when I say what I say, I'm not doing it from my previous points of view or status. So let's say that everybody that has these types of addictions or any type of addiction is a person who believes in God and has that mental fortitude to be able to say, I believe in God, God's going to help me through this. When it comes to a biological aspect, so say for instance we're talking about OCD, or we're talking about nymphomania, or we're talking about the idea of being literally biologically, chemically changed because of addiction to drinking or heroin, how are we going to actually allow that to go through? Because these are actual body and biological conditions that are actually forcing people to go and do this.
I don't know if you can see it here, but this is Steph, and you can see that she's flashing her mic. And on Clubhouse, this I think is oftentimes a way to show that you're in agreement. But Steph was in some other previous videos recently, and she's one of the more sane atheists, but she'll be a major player in this video.
Because of a biological need, not a mental aspiration of I want to do it because. So can we differentiate between the two? Or is that still the same?
That was like differentiated maybe like 40 minutes ago.
It didn't sound like anybody actually separated the two.
We tried.
Because we're still doing the same thing.
Oh, this has been the topic of the week.
Well, so here's
Can
what
I
I heard.
piggyback on that?
Real quick. Here's
Steph,
what I heard.
Steph.
Common is
ahead,
dead on, right? So
no, he's dead
everyone
wrong.
in this... No, Roy, stop. For the love of all things, dude. Everyone in this room, don't think of a pink elephant. Whatever you do, don't think of an elephant that has skin that's pink with just like little pink hairs on it. Don't think of it. Okay? Now, everyone think about what your mind just did over the past 5 seconds. That's an illustration of how psychological compulsions work. If you have no shush, Roy. Seriously.
No.
Anyone who shushes Roy gets a thumbs up.
If you have no experience with compulsions, you have no ground to stand on to say anything about them. Common and Callous and Roger have been absolutely dead on. You have to separate the mental from the physical. And part of what happens physically with compulsions is there is a stimulus, whether it's learned or whether it's obtained in an environment that becomes out of your control. When the Bible says take every thought captive, it doesn't mean don't think things. It's physically impossible to not think things, okay? This is like so well established and so commonly understood. That. Roy, please. So when we say take every thought captive, that's not what the Bible is referring to. The Bible is incredibly psychologically sound. And part of what it talks about is actually a huge premise of acceptance and commitment therapy, which is extremely effective in treating a drug addiction. and anxiety disorders and all sorts of other things. And the premise of that is you accept that your brain produces compulsions and thoughts that are not related to you. However, the best way to perpetuate compulsions, thoughts, and behaviors is to fight them. So if you accept them and commit to a different behavior, you will see a different outcome. Now, I understand, Roy, that you would probably agree with what I just said. However, when as Christians we get up here and we start to combine the medical condition with the condition of sin, we immediately run into territory we are not qualified to discuss. Okay?
I am.
There
I am.
is,
Okay,
you are
let me
not,
say this.
no,
Let me
Roy,
say this.
you, hold on. I am
I'll be real
almost
quick.
done. I am
Steph, I don't want
almost
to get
done,
too far
dude.
past this.
No, okay. So here's your first red flag. So when you're going to talk about medical, psychological issues and you're not qualified and you're going to be dispensing advice on the internet, that's a big no-no, right? I'm sure that breaks most TOSs that are on different platforms, but that is not acceptable, right? So that's the first way that Roy is actually potentially endangering people.
Almost done,
No.
Roy. Almost done. Almost done.
I am almost done.
Okay.
She's waited forever. I'm trying to be fair.
Thank you, Nate. Roy, you are not qualified to talk on this topic. And the
I
fact that
am.
you would is incredibly harmful
That's
to
the
other
pride you guys
believers.
talking about.
It's incredibly harmful to anyone who has cried out to God to heal them. And just so everyone knows, I don't struggle with addiction, but I lost my brother to a heroin overdose last year, and I have an anxiety disorder. Most of you guys know that, but so I can relate. Like, compulsion is a huge part of my disorder. Okay, no matter how many times I have cried out to God, no matter how many times my brother, who was a believer, cried out to God to save his life, he was never permitting the use of heroin. Never did he come to anyone ever and say, "This is a good thing, leave me alone." There is something incredibly physical that happened to him. Now, the difference here is that he made a choice that began a catastrophic physical event that ended in his death that he could not foresee. Okay. However, anyone in this room on blood pressure medication is experiencing the same phenomenon. We cannot come up here and say that addiction, compulsions, or other things like that can be controlled the way that you're describing. Now I'm done.
Steph, how do you
Just,
feel?
I feel better. Thank you, Nate.
Roy.
just real quick to what Steph said. So I disagree with her that I'm not qualified. Here's the thing, guys.
Here he goes again, affirming that he's qualified to talk about these issues. He's not.
What Steph left out of the equation is the fact that if you are physically so inclined with a particular so-called willful disobedience, and it has now affected your body in a physical way,
My God.
when you cry out to God and it is his will, he can take that physical thing that you say is across the board for every human being and change it, because that is the sovereignty
And
of
when
God.
he
So
doesn't,
if
Roy, they're left with your advice of just
when
stop.
he doesn't, then it's not his will. There's another way, Steph, and you don't have to go through a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year process. And if death is the consequence, I don't see that as a bad thing. I see it as a good thing. You're just with the Lord a little quicker. Yes.
Wow. So if somebody wants to
Yeah,
carry
I don't
on
even know where to
living,
begin with that. I don't even know where to begin. Roy,
Yeah, so these people are supposed to be like brothers and sisters in Christ or whatever bullshit. And here we got Steph, who's, like I said, one of the more sane Christians, and she gave an emotional story about the loss of her brother very recently, last year, okay? And then Roy, he's got the nerve to say, basically that if he died, he's okay with it. And he's just going to see the Lord a little bit sooner. It's not a big deal that your brother died. What a fucking asshole.
here's the problem. And Roy, I'm a believer, and I don't doubt your salvation, and I don't doubt your solid doctrine. On this topic, you are dead wrong. I can't even begin to educate
And
you on
that's
how
your
wrong
opinion,
you
and
are.
you're fine with that.
It's not an opinion. It's a medically, scientifically backed, like,
And by the way, when Roy did say that, you'll notice that there wasn't really much of a response chastising Roy for something like that. The most we got was like, ay. What a fucking joke.
addiction has been treated for hundreds of years.
This has nothing to do with that.
If the answer was just stop, this thing doesn't exist, God can heal you, the end.
Okay.
Like, then nobody would struggle with addiction. No one.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And the reason that they do is because they haven't surrendered.
Okay.
So
All right.
let me explain to you. Let me explain to you.
Roy.
Yeah, so now Royce moved on to now he's made the implication that when Steph's brother was crying out to God for help, Roy's saying, your brother wasn't sincere. Like, when he told Steph that, he was just fucking lying or something. What a fucking asshole.
Roy, hold on
Really,
one second. Can I say one
really
thing?
Hang on.
I know
there's a
what
lot of people that wanted to say
Okay,
one thing.
go ahead, you guys. I just want to say surrender. That's all you got to do.
Noted.
Yeah, just let Jesus take the wheel, right?
Daniel, I know you haven't been able to speak for a while. What did you want to say, Daniel?
The thing that the guy said earlier, I don't remember his name. What was it? Roger. Roy saying that his experience with this issue contradicts millions of other people's experiences and medical
Contradicted.
expertise is pride.
Contradicted.
Yes, it does.
Starting off.
It's not. It is not as
foundation.
easy for everyone as it is for you, and that's not a thing. You're saying things that are harmful to people.
No, I'm not saying you are me. I'm not saying that you have to do it. You can do it. You as much time as you want, all the time you need. Okay. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you can be healed immediately if you don't want to be. I'm not saying that. You're going to be healed when you want to be. Just surrender. Whenever you surrender, that's it. We're done. God will take over.
No, I don't
Roy,
necessarily
thousands,
believe. Hold on,
hundreds
let
of
me say something
thousands
real
of
quick.
American people would not have died last year of overdoses if they could be done when they wanted to be done.
You say, what would your next step in your arsenal be if we're calling it the right word and we're doing just as you say, yet we still deal with the same exact stuff? What would your step 2 be?
Yeah. So is that person, and we can't read their heart, is that person really saying it? And are they really stopping?
Yes.
Or are they not stopping and they still give in to that temptation?
Again, implying that Steph's brother wasn't sincere and wasn't really asking God sincerely.
Well, no, it would be giving in. That's the point of it. Because if we could just be like, if it was a switch, if we had a light switch and everyone could say, okay, here's your choice. Do you want to continue living in, quote, willful disobedience? Leave the light switch on. If you want to stop living in willful disobedience, that everyone else would call addiction, flip the switch off. Every single person would flip that switch off and never turn it back on. But it's not as easy as physically reaching over and pressing a button. It's just not.
I agree, Nate. It's not as easy for you, right? Or
Nate,
whoever
can I?
you happen to be. But
yes, Roy, for
some people.
99% of humanity, it is not that easy.
Okay, it's
Right.
easier for certain people, and when you use the right language and you have the truth that you're believing rather than the lie, then it is even easier to surrender to God. Because unlike what Calvinists say, if that was true, then God would take the sin away from you and the desire away from you before you could say, "Oh, I have faith that He will." You understand what I'm saying? So He doesn't. That's not how it works. You have to take the first step. He will take the next step. Surrender it. Give it to Him. Hand it over.
See,
to
Roy,
that's
Him.
I
where I
think
think
you
that
should
you're.
read what's going on in the chat to get some really helpful feedback about your evangelism skills.
But can I make the comment too? Because, and I'm going to continue to advocate for those who still have may be a brother or sister in Christ, and they may still be sinning, and they may have an addiction. But what you're doing, you may push someone away from Christ just by your words, and you don't even know it.
Yeah, I doubt that.
It's literally
May
happening
I go next,
right
please?
now in this room. We're getting feedback saying this is the reason that I'm an atheist, or this is the thing that makes me.
Yeah,
Roy, like the words,
I
it's
would
so
ask that
dangerous.
person. I would ask that person, Steph. So when they stand before Jesus, or
So I went back and I looked at the chat, and it's true, these comments were being made, right? And people are saying like, I'm a new Christian and I'm rethinking it, or this is why I'm an atheist, blah blah blah. But just imagine that you're a part of this club, and this Ask a Christian club. We've got answers, and And your ambassador to Christianity is Roy Montero. And think of all the things that he's saying just within this own video, right? Fucking nuts, man.
They're going to
Yeah,
go, well, that
all of
Roy
them.
guy, it's that Roy guy, Lord, send me to heaven. No, don't send me to hell. It's that Roy guy made me do it.
Roy, that
But
doesn't
God,
mean
but
that we
God's
give
going to
Hold
judge
on,
your
people
hold
pride.
on.
stones
Do
to
you really
stumble
think
over. You are giving
hold
people
on,
stones to stumble over.
hold on. Do you really think that Jesus will say, oh, guy, you get a pass. You go to heaven? I don't think that's what
I
happens.
mean, I think you're going to hear about this.
Ooh.
Well, that's
You know,
fine. I don't.
Well, I mean, to so
can I make one quick statement?
so no, just a logical point. Like, this is a very emotional topic, and to the people in chat saying, it makes them question. One's an atheist, which you make him reaffirm his atheism. One's a new Christian, which makes him question Christians because he goes by their conduct. I would just say, logically speaking, this should be irrelevant. It should be, right? It's not, because we factor in people and we factor in emotions and what their ideology is tied to. But focus on the logical. If you meet a really nice Christian and a really mean Christian, that has nothing to do with the existence of God. So keep that in mind. Even if like all the Christians you meet are completely terrible humans, I mean, God can still very well exist. So the only reason to believe or not believe in a God is because you believe or don't believe in a God. That's it. It shouldn't have anything to do with any other data.
Yeah, so all that was just damage control for Roy. That's just damage control from your ambassador to Christianity, Roy Montero. Like, why should you have to do damage control for one of your leaders in your club? And by the way, typically people don't come to be religious or Christians because of arguments. They're usually already religious, already a Christian, and they use those arguments to justify their belief. So,
just point of logic, common sense. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to actually add on to that from being myself as an atheist as well. I'm actually quite interested in the fact that there are so many different Christians that are against Roy and so many Christians that are for Roy. It just proves the fact in what you actually said. People are people. That doesn't mean the religion or the belief in a God is a bad thing. It's the people that follow. And that's not to say that the people in this room are bad for what they believe in. It's just the difference of opinion. But the question that I would actually like to ask Roy is, do you understand that there is a difference from when people choose to go and do these sinful acts to when there's a biological component that compels them to do it?
So the reason that it compels them to do it is because they started doing it when they had a choice, that they were not yet under the negative consequences of their choice. Is
Not
that
always.
correct?
No, not always. For instance, with OCD, that's not a physical choice that manifests from the beginning. For instance, the idea of... Can I finish? Sorry?
Obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yes.
which is that this is the guy who has been reaffirming throughout this entire video that he is qualified to speak about psychological addictions and physical addictions. He doesn't even know what OCD is.
What disorder?
Obsessive compulsive.
Obsessive compulsive. Yeah.
Obsessive compulsive. If you're not of sound mind, all bets are off. I always
Right.
say that.
Well,
Okay,
So
then.
for example,
Common,
Roy, I have a
don't-
coaster in my.
yeah.
No,
No, I'm
I'm doing it,
encouraging
Roy.
Common to not take that and run too far with it.
I have a coaster in my house on my table. My mom, my mother, and I both would say have diagnosable OCD to the nth degree. Like, if I wanted to sit there on that couch and not move that coaster, someone would have had to physically chain me down and took away the use of my arm. The same thing with my mom. Like, for us to not move that coaster, if the other one moved it, you would have had to restrict our movement. You would have had to take away the ability. I could sit there and sweat bullets for maybe like a few minutes, maybe, and not move it. But eventually, when I'm about ready to just explode, I'm going to give in and move that darn stupid coaster. You would have to, I don't know, shoot them full of like Lazopam or something, so they just would be unconscious and not have the ability to think thoughts.
Exactly. It's not a choice. Yeah.
Like I say, When you're not of sound mind or body, all bets are off.
I mean,
not
I
in
think
that
I'm pretty
discussion.
much of sound mind. I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, yeah, that's
Not
an
when it
issue,
comes to
but it's
that.
not
And
like
I don't.
it's not like I have
And I
no.
don't think the Lord is going to call that an addiction any more than I would.
More friendly fire. Now Roy is calling Nate not of sound mind. Wow. I'm dying to become a Christian.
So the same for someone doing
Well,
heroin?
So if they're of sound mind and they can make the decision to not do it, yeah,
Okay, but they
absolutely.
can't, right? So I'm getting
So
you to
if they
concede that they're not,
if
right?
if they don't have a sound mind to where they decided in the beginning,
100% of
right,
people on
to make
heroin?
Okay. So Steph, listen very carefully to what I'm saying. If you don't use the word addiction and you use the word willful disobedience for those who have a sound mind and body, you will understand.
I would never
whatever
do that
sin,
because it's so callous.
okay, that's your opinion and that's fine.
Well, simply it's a wrong
So
diagnosis.
what
It's
I'm
not just
Exactly.
saying,
callous, it's
Yes.
wrong.
what I'm saying is when that person finds themselves in habitual sin, as Nate mentioned earlier, you know, having a hooker once a year for 10 years, not habitual.
for the
Having
record,
a
hookers and meth
hooker,
are not my go-to. I just
Roy, how many
disclaimer.
times do you do heroin before you get addicted? How much heroin does it take for your
you
body to
never
physically
get
change?
addicted. You never get
No,
addicted.
no, Roy.
There you go. That's another big no-no. So previously he was saying that if you are addicted, then you can just stop. And I don't think it's in this video, but Roger previously pointed out that if you are addicted to, say, for example, alcohol, and you just stop, you can die from it, right? You're not supposed to do that. So that's dangerous medical advice. Now Roy is saying that these things like heroin are not addictive. So now if you weren't already addicted, he's basically saying that you can dabble in things like heroin without a fear of getting addicted, which is dangerous fucking medical advice. Like, this whole room is a fucking joke, man. And I can't believe these people were like, had to put the think tank together to figure out why their club got deleted.
That's exactly
Okay.
the wrong answer. And the
So
answer is
if
once.
okay, listen,
Once.
if the process takes you to where you now have to pay for the consequences of your sin, that's different, okay? That's not the same thing as addiction.
He's basically saying to Steph, hey, your brother dying was the consequence of his sin. Shoulder shrug.
So 100% of addicts are now what? Like, what are you saying?
Well, there are no addicts. So people who are in willful sin are there because they
Here we go again. There are no addicts. Just denial of like reality.
choose to be.
I don't know how many more times we can feed this beast.
Look, can I
Let's
just
talk
ask
about
one
total
more
Yeah,
depravity,
I kept
guys.
cutting Common off. I'm sorry. If there's any way we could let Common finish.
I'm going to be out of pocket
Common,
for
go
about
ahead.
10 minutes. I got to go pick up my
Oh, thank
son.
God. Kudos to Steph for actually having the balls to actually bring up this topic in a way that pretty much everyone else in the room was afraid to do or wouldn't do. I mean, Jesus, this Christian solidarity thing, I mean, it's gotta have limits, people. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to say you're wrong. And when atheists see that, they're not gonna see it as some kind of negative. Actually, I think a lot of atheists would see it as a virtue. Fuck's sake.